This episode is brought to you by Nespresso and Samra Origins by the Weekend Coffee Collection.
Introducing Samra Origins. My collaboration with Nespresso is a connection to my roots, to my mother, Samra. Coffee that hits the right notes. It transports you. Crafted with unique notes and bold soaring flavors. Experience a taste that moves you. Nespresso and Samra Origins.
Discover more at Nespresso.com.
But you know, happiness can be found even in the darkest of times. If one only remembers to turn on the light.
It takes a great deal of bravery to stand up to your enemies, but a great deal more to stand up to your friends.
The ones that love us never really leave us.
Working hard is important, but there's something that matters: believing in yourself. If they can do it, why not us?
Hey everyone, welcome to Hogwarts, a podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Hogwarts, a podcast. Today we are covering Act 1, Scenes 5, 6, and 7 from Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. Elizabeth is back with us.
Hi everyone.
Everybody buckle in for more Elizabeth hot takes on Albus and the story of the Cursed Child that we have.
I am honestly so excited to hear what our audience thinks of Cursed Child because I want to know if I'm on an island or not.
So far, from early polling, most people have no real experience with this whatsoever.
Okay, those of you who have seen it or read it, let us know what you think.
There are a few people that have seen the stage production, but there's a lot of people that haven't actually gone through
and read it?
Yeah, the screenplay like we are. So it's interesting to kind of see the full detail of it when it's literally laid out in front of you.
Yeah. Again, I enjoyed seeing the play, but I'm finding this reading experience interesting.
Well, you wanted to know what the people think.
Yes.
So let's get into a couple of shout-outs that we have. Some of them are about Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, and some of them are still about the books and other Harry Potter-related things. So, Sargon on Blue Sky, who I know has been posting a little bit on our page.
Yes, thank you for your comments.
Yeah. Sargon says, I read the book and was about to pick up the second when I heard they were making them into movies. I deliberately waited to read the books until after I saw all the movies so I wouldn't go into them with expectations. Reading the books was still experiencing it anew. Rereading is great.
That's such an interesting way of tackling the series.
That is certainly a take.
Yeah.
And it's quite possibly a relatively unique one. Not that you're probably the only person to have done that, but you're certainly in the minority.
Yeah, I was very much like, I have to... I mean, granted, the books came out before the movies did. They were all out by the time I went to see the movies, but I was very much like, I need the whole story, and the expectation is that the movie shows me the whole story, and then it didn't, and I didn't like it.
I get the thinking behind it of I don't want to go in with that high expectation of the movie and be disappointed. So I totally understand the logic there. It's just hard to lay off a good book when you know it's a good book and there's a lot of...
And there's 6 more books to also read in that series. Yeah.
It's an interesting take, Sargon. Thank you for the comment. And yes, I think we very clearly agree that rereading is amazing. I think we are proof to that. So thank you for the comment. Thank you for reaching out to us on Blue Sky. We have another Blue Sky comment from Goldie. Goldie says, OMG, you're right. I never noticed this. That's really cool and really shows how talented the author is and how much thought she put into her work. Thank you for the comment, Goldie. This is in reference to an image that Elizabeth posted on Blue Sky on our page that refers to a writing technique.
Yeah, it was that chiastic structure I referenced when we talked about those chapters where J.K. Rowling literally goes backwards through the series in the Battle of Hogwarts, and the meme shows like some of the details. I think I expanded upon them when we talked about it, minus the spoilers. But yeah, I agree. I think it's really cool. And once you see it, you're like, whoa, I didn't even notice it, but it works perfectly. So it's really cool. And I also have to thank Goldie for commenting so much on Blue Sky, because I feel like every time I log in, there's something new from them, and it's a happy thing. So thank you very much.
Yeah, it's nice to see Blue Sky gaining some traction with some of our listeners and some of our fans. So that's really nice to see. Thank you, Goldie, for the comment. We got a comment from Mark. This transitions more to the Cursed Child aspect. Mark says he has tickets to see the stage production in a month.
Ooh, fun.
So we're excited to hear your thoughts on the stage production. So please double back.
Yeah, let us know what you think about it.
But we're excited for you to see it. We both really enjoyed the stage production. No matter what we think of just reading the screenplay, it is a whole different experience watching
I
stage.
hope you enjoy the bookcase as much as I enjoyed the bookcase.
Ooh, mysterious spoilers. Thank you, Mark, for the comment. Jenny has also left a comment, but this time on Twitter, not Blue Sky. Jenny says that she has both read and seen Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. She says, I don't mind the book. It was, in a way, hard to read, as it's the script of the play. Mm-hmm. Saw the play in London in December last year.
Cool.
Really enjoyed it. I feel, in a way, it's just a separate story and not necessarily as canon to the other books. So a couple of things there. One, really cool that you got to see it in London.
Yeah.
Kind of jealous. Another thing is we commented, or at least I did, on the first episode of, it does read a little weird.
Yeah.
It's a little less flowy, and you have to kind of put a little bit more imagination behind it, because they just literally do the dialogue.
Well, that's what we were discovering with last episode. Depending on how you read it, depending on what tone you imagine it, you could have very different takes on the story.
Very true. And then lastly, I also mentioned that it does give you enough wiggle room to have it as your own canon and not the Harry Potter Wizarding World canon.
Yeah, I'm still very much taking it as not part of the 7.
We're not alone in thinking that. There are a lot of fans that have taken that position, so it's fine. Obviously, the actual creator of the world has formally come out and said that it is, in fact, canon. So, I mean, however which way you want to go, the purist route or the I'm going to think of it how I want to think of it route, whichever way I'm cool with, that's fine. Thank you, Jenny, for the comment on Twitter, and I know you as well have been very active on our Twitter account. So,
yeah.
Thank you. If you have a comment or thought that you want to relay to us and have us comment on, well, you can find us on any of our socials, Blue Sky, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, by searching at Hogwarts-a-Pod, and we'll pop up. Leave a comment there. You can also leave a comment on Spotify if you're listening to us on that platform. There's also a poll attached with the Spotify episode drop, so please look out for that as well and participate in those, because we love seeing those results.
Yeah, you said so far with the last result, as most people just haven't read it, haven't seen it.
I gave a couple of options, and so far it's 100% no, I haven't read it.
Fair enough.
That's a result. So that's okay. But let us know what you think by participating in those polls as well. Now, we do have a very low... It's only 3 scenes. Yeah. Scene 5, 6, and 7 of Act 1. But there is a lot to talk about in these 3 scenes.
Strap in, everyone.
So bear with us as we try to tackle all of this. We start with Act 1, Scene 5, which is at the Ministry of Magic in Harry's office. Mm-hmm. Harry has an office at the Ministry of Magic.
Which he doesn't keep very neat and orderly.
How interesting is that? No, he does not keep it orderly. So Hermione is in his office sorting through all of the papers on his desk and in his drawers and all that kind of stuff. And Harry enters the room in a rush with a graze on his cheek that's bleeding. Harry announces that he has indeed captured Theodore Nott, who is now in custody. And if you are struggling to remember why Theodore Nott is important, Death Eaters.
Yeah, his father was a Death Eater. He got arrested after the Battle of the Ministry. Nott was the same age as Harry. He was a pureblood Slytherin. He, if you remember back in book 5, he was one of the 3 students, Harry, Neville, and Nott, who was able to see a Thestral. He's also the kid that Slughorn refused to let join the Slug Club because his father had been arrested as a Death Eater.
Yeah. So that's the connection. So it's nice to bring in one, an old name, and 2, one who's a Death Eater.
Yeah, it makes sense for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So also, Theodore Nott, let's give some credit to Nott because he got Harry. He got Harry a little bit. He roughed him up a touch.
It was just a scratch wound.
Just a scratch. Just a scratch. But Hermione asks about a time turner that he might have been in possession of. And Harry ends up pulling the time turner out and shows it to her. Hermione asks if it's a legit actual time turner or only an hour reversal unit.
She did say it didn't look like the typical one that she had.
Yeah, it looks different.
Which seems to suggest either there has always been multiple versions of time turners, or there has been some type of advancement in magic to create one that can go back more than hours.
That's what Harry seems to think, is that it might be an advancement since they were kids.
Which, how do you feel about that? That there's different varieties of time turners?
Well, you've got that sense when they were in that time turner room, because there were all types of clocks all over the place.
I guess I'm picturing, like, you have the ridiculously tiny version that can only go back by seconds, and then ones that can go back by minutes, hours, months, years. Like, it just seems odd to me. I don't know.
I wasn't bothered by that, because I had, I guess, always made that connection of if there's a room with a bunch of different clocks and they all had a time turner-esque aspect to them, then I always figured there were multiple variations. What I jumped to here was more of maybe Nott or someone who was trying to use a time turner actually did some changes to it and actually made some modifications to a normal time turner, and that's why it looked like similar but not the same. So maybe they modified it in a way to better get their end result,
which seems so dangerous.
Sure.
I mean, Dumbledore, when Hermione got the time turner in the first place, she said McGonagall gave her all those stories about wizards accidentally killing their future selves and messing with time. I mean, like, you could destroy your own existence if you made the wrong mistakes. So to go back even further is like, ooh, that's a choice.
This is also interesting because even though we're more than 19 years later now, there's still remnants of the Dark Lord around. And there's still remnants of the Death Eaters around. And Nott, presumably, as a kid during the Battle of Hogwarts, and when all that broke down, would probably get either a lighter sentence or maybe even no sentence at all because he was a minor and maybe not knowing what he was doing, whatever.
I guess it would depend on if he stayed to fight from Slytherin and the Death Eater side,
so,
or if he, like, evacuated.
I don't know what kind of sentence he's going to get as essentially a kid.
Yeah.
So he would have potentially more of a potential to have a life after that. Because his father would be
in Azkaban
in perpetuity. He might have a chance to have, like, an actual life going forward. And it seems like he's still chosen more of a dark magic path.
I also find it interesting how, like you said, 19 years have gone by. There's still so much cleaning up to do, which I think is realistic. It's really hard to sort out the bad actors from those who were just bewitched and those who thought that Voldemort was doing the right thing. Like, it's hard to reunite a country after something that horrendous.
Well, Hermione goes on to scold Harry for his
not doing his homework,
not being on top of his paperwork that's in his current office. And she notes that there are some actually interesting cases littered about in all of this paperwork. She notes that there is a group of mountain trolls that are writing grap horns in Hungary. Hungary being Eastern Europe. Thanks to all the listeners out in Hungary. Appreciate you.
Look out for grap horns.
Look out for grap horns. And if you're unfamiliar with what Graphorns are, they're a really cool creature that I became really familiar with by playing Hogwarts Legacy.
Yeah, according to the Wizarding World, they are large and grayish purple with a humped back. They have 2 very long, sharp horns. They walk on large 4-thumbed feet, and they have an extremely aggressive nature.
Yeah, they're big and they're aggressive, and they can do a lot of damage.
It also said on the Wizarding World that while the mountain trolls might try to ride them, the Graphorns don't enjoy it, and a lot of mountain trolls get bumps and bruises from being rejected by the Graphorns.
Well, mountain trolls themselves are described as large and aggressive.
Well, it shows you
dangerous.
how dangerous these Graphorns are.
Yeah, so it's an interesting combo that I believe Harry would indeed actually be interested in tackling. Yeah. You also have giants with winged tattoos who are walking through Greek seas.
I thought that was an interesting detail.
That is an interesting detail.
Both the idea that they want tattoos and that someone is willing to tattoo them.
But that is also a potential issue that Harry should and could deal with. Mm-hmm. However, I do have 2 further comments on this, actually. But she goes on to also mention that werewolves have now gone completely underground.
Yeah.
Which is concerning because now it's harder to actually keep track of them. What are they doing?
Especially since so many werewolves were on the side of Voldemort 19 years ago.
All of these were. Trolls, giants, werewolves.
Yeah.
All allies of Voldemort's army. So it's worthwhile just keeping tabs on, hey, what are you doing?
Right.
What are you discussing? What are you planning? All that kind of stuff. It is interesting to note that this is the British Ministry of Magic. Mm-hmm. They are located in London. Mm-hmm. They're keeping track of things in Hungary, on the other side of Europe, and the Greek seas.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but shouldn't those countries also have their ministries of magic? Maybe they're not as big, but are you really telling me, Hermione, that you're about to send Harry Potter to the other side of Europe to go deal with these mountain trolls and giants?
Well, I'm sure their ministries do have tabs on stuff. I could just imagine that the British, especially Harry and Hermione being part of the Golden Trio, want to clean up the mess that was left by Voldemort.
Or do you think these ministries of magic, do you think someone in Greece is like, hey, we have this giant problem?
Harry Potter.
Can you send Harry Potter? No, I'm serious. I'm absolutely serious.
Yeah.
You think they call him up and they're like, we need that guy. This is beyond our control. We need the guy that vanquished the Dark Lord.
Well, if that's the case, then that shows how overworked Harry is, and that could definitely help explain why he's avoiding his paperwork.
Well, he gets into a more specific reason why he's avoiding the paperwork. He's never been a paperwork guy, which I've been a big critic of Harry not doing the homework. For example, the biggest example, the Triwizard Tournament.
Yeah, you got on him about that.
I got him on a lot because I'm like, this is a life or death tournament, and you're putting it off until the last possible moment to actually be like, oh wait, I need to figure this out. Mm-hmm. So he's never been that kind of guy. He's always been a let's get my hands dirty first individual, which honestly I respected it. That's your process. That's your process. Hermione clearly has a different process. Hermione criticizes Harry so much for the paperwork not being done because he is the head of magical law enforcement, which, to my understanding, is the number 2 position in the Ministry of Magic. The number 1 position at the Ministry of Magic is Minister for Magic. Hermione says you really need to get on your paperwork. Consider this a request from the Minister for Magic. Hermione. Hermione is the Minister for Magic.
Yes.
So, 2 of the 3 Golden Trio is now number 1 and number 2 at the Ministry of Magic.
Which...
how do we feel about that?
My headcanon is still that Harry became the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher. I think he really shone as his true self when he was helping people learn how to defend themselves, and he took joy in seeing them succeed. So I really liked that from him. I don't hate him as the magical law enforcement head. I mean, I think he'd do a good job with it, clearly. Hermione as Minister of Magic is interesting. I know she said that she didn't really want to work in the ministry because she thought that it couldn't really accomplish anything worthwhile. She kind of gave that jab to Rufus when he came to talk to them about the stuff in Dumbledore's will. So it is interesting that she ended up in that position. I could see her as having the intelligence of doing the job. I don't know if she would necessarily have the confidence in it, because I think sometimes she would want to overanalyze things and she would lack the go-to-it that Harry seems to have, which is maybe why he's in the head of magical law enforcement. He's her number 2, because he would be the one to actually make her act on something. I think it's interesting that Ron doesn't seem to be in the ministry either. Like, whenever I think of the trio, I always think of the trio together. So it's weird to think of only the 2 legs of the trio together here.
So here's why I actually like this.
Okay.
One, as much as it's nice to reflect on Harry's success in his short stint as Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher during his 5th year, when he did do a good job of that. But if we also remember that time, his strengths were not exactly lesson planning and or grading. It was the actual practical application of the magic. Mm. I don't think he would be a good teacher in the long term, because he'd have to deal with all the bureaucratic parts of it, which clearly he doesn't want to do. So I think instead of teaching Defense Against the Dark Arts, he wants to be the Defense Against the Dark Arts.
I can see that.
So I think him going naturally into being an Auror made sense. Mm-hmm. And then obviously he worked his way on up. And Hermione, I believe, also got a lower level position in the ministry at the start too. Obviously, she didn't step right into.
Yeah, she was
minister.
doing something with magical creatures, basically taking Spew
to the next level.
Yeah.
Right. So they both started with, for the lack of a better term, entry level ministry positions and worked their way up. Mm-hmm. I like where they're at now because, as you were alluding to, they work really well together. Mm-hmm. They balance each other out very well. Where she's more hesitant, he's more aggressive. Where he's maybe a little bit, I'm not sure how to handle this. She's like, no, you got to do it this way. They counterbalance very well. So having them as the 1 and 2 punch works. My biggest critique of this is, and you kind of hinted towards it with the discussion that they had with Rufus, of you both hated the Ministry of Magic. And now you are both
working for it
as the literal poster children of you're out on Front Street every day with this now.
Yeah.
So, and we can get more into it because I go over what their roles kind of entail a little bit more, but I'm like, come on, guys. Really? You now work for this. Ugh, unbelievable.
I still... Again, I like the idea of
justice for Rufus.
I like the idea of them balancing each other out. I just still don't like the idea of Ron not being around because, while yes, he's at home obviously for Hermione because they're married now, he's taking over working with George at Weasley Wizard Wheezes, which, okay, fine, but I feel like Ron does bring something to the trio that helps them succeed. I don't think Harry or Hermione by themselves would have ever gotten through all of Hogwarts and all the chaos that went along with it. So, I don't know. It's just odd to me to think like Ron's kind of been like stunted to the side a little bit here.
You could say the same thing for Ginny. So, Hermione asks about Ginny and Albus. She's trying to change the subject from her being boss to now her being friend. And she asks about Ginny and Albus specifically, and Harry notes that he's about as good as a father as he is at paperwork. And then he immediately changes the subject and is like, how's Rose and Hugo? Hermione says that Ron has criticized her for seemingly seeing her secretary more than her own family. And Hermione reflects, do you think we made a choice to either be Parent of the Year or Ministry Official of the Year? And in so saying, she knows that they're now 40 years old. it's an interesting thing that Hermione is kind of contemplating. To your thing about Ron, I think Ron did initially, if I'm not mistaken. I thought he did initially try to be an Auror.
He did, and then he ended up just dropping out of it and just going to help George run the shop.
Which makes sense, because one, it's a big business that George probably does legitimately need help with. Mm-hmm. And it's honestly probably more suited for Ron.
And honestly, probably gets him better money.
Could, yeah. Yeah, you're not wrong about that either. So there's that. But it is an interesting thing that Hermione thinks of, is like, have we made a decision to donate most of our lives to our work and less to our families?
I like Hermione contemplating that, because I think Hermione, being the top student every year, is one of those people who, like, would easily burn out from work just because they spend so much time focusing on work that they kind of lose their social side. They lose their family connections because they're never at home. They're always focused on getting their paperwork done. Which is why I liked her telling Harry, like, go home, go see your family. The Hogwarts Express is going to be leaving in a few days. Like, you have limited time with your children. Go refresh yourself, come back, read some of your paperwork. And then this time turner thing we can talk more about, because she did say she does think that discovery is important.
Before we take a break, I do want to double back on to something with the Harry paperwork issue. Mm-hmm. And Hermione getting on him for being like, you got to read this stuff. If you're going to go out there and risk your life, you got to know what you're getting into. And Harry counters with, I do know what I'm getting into. I have ears on the ground. Like, I'm hearing I'm out there. Mm-hmm. I'm hearing what's going on from people, from literally the events happening around us. Mm-hmm. I don't have to read it in a brief. Like, that idea between his own version of intel or intelligence and, like, the intel that he's being given. He'd rather tangibly experience it than read about it on some page that doesn't mean anything to him.
I feel like both are valid, though. Like, yes, you might be getting information from the people that hasn't gotten to the official paperwork yet, but at the same time, you don't necessarily know if some of the people feeding you information are accurate or the most up-to-date information that maybe Hermione has gotten into that paperwork. So it is beneficial to do both.
And I know Hermione was talking about the balance between work and home. And I think we also see her here struggle with work and friendship. Because working so closely with Harry, well, it must be nice on a lot of different levels. Yeah. Because you know that individual.
You know their strengths, their weaknesses.
And you also know you can trust them.
Yeah.
Like, they have your back, you have theirs. Yeah. Like, you know you're in it together fully, which is nice. But at the same time, as she kind of tries to navigate here, okay, Harry, yes, you have eccentricities that, yes, I respect, and yes, it works for you. I can't deny that. At the same time, we have a job to do, and this is, like, technically important, so can you please do it?
Yeah.
It's an interesting line for her to walk, which Harry does, for the record, acknowledge. Mm-hmm. Like, he gives her a stiff nod and is like, all right, I'll get to it. Mm-hmm. He also is a little cheeky with it and waves his wand so they all fly into neat piles.
Yeah, because she was criticizing how messy his desk was.
So he's a little snarky with it, but he does ultimately acknowledge, like, all right, you are the Minister for Magic. I actually like you more. Mm-hmm. I do wonder, as they've been employed in the Ministry of Magic and as they've risen those ranks, and they've had, for better or for worse, I don't care what your intent is, those positions are still political. You still have to deal with the politics, which we might see later in one of the next scenes. So I just wonder how their views have changed of the ministry, and if they have looked back on previous ministers, or Albus and his choices to participate in the ministry or not, and gone, oh wow, we have a whole new level of either respect or understanding for the work that went into it.
Well, I guess what I'm thinking about is how, like, you know, Harry didn't like Fudge's regime because Fudge put up blinders to the return of Voldemort. He didn't like Rufus's regime because Rufus, while he did acknowledge that, yes, Voldemort is back. It was very obvious by that point. He still went about fighting him in Harry's mind the wrong way, because it was, we're going to put out lies to the public to make them feel better instead of telling the reality of the situation, which again, Fudge also did not do. So I guess with Kingsley, probably he did a really good job of cleaning stuff up, and now it's just Hermione's turn to do the remnants that remain.
We've had a string of battle-centric ministers.
Yeah.
So you had Rufus, who was obviously also in the Department of Magical Law Enforcement as the head of the Order Office. Then Rufus's replacement ended up being the head of Magical Law Enforcement, Pius. Granted, Pius was under the Imperius Curse, not a willing subject of Voldy. So there's that. But still, law enforcement. Then we have Kingsley come in after the Battle of Hogwarts and after the downfall of Voldy, who was obviously the head Order at the time. So you have another
law enforcement person.
Law enforcement slash, for lack of a better term, warrior of sorts. And now you have Hermione. I don't know what the transition was, if it went straight from Kingsley to Hermione or if there was an in-between somewhere there. I can't imagine there would be. I mean,
19 years, that seems like...
Feels like Kingsley could handle that for that time. So Hermione, I'm assuming, would take over after Kingsley. And let's be real, though she's very academically based, she was also a very active participant on the battlefield at the Battle of Hogwarts. And now you have Harry as a head of Magical Law Enforcement slash former Order. So it's just an interesting succession of ministers for magic following Fudge. Post-Fudge, it's been an interesting succession line.
Oh, there's been a lot of war.
There has been. So let's take a little break, and after the break, we will get back to Harry's side of the story as we visit Harry and Ginny's house. So we'll take a break. We'll be right back. Before we get to our break sound, I'd like to acknowledge our friend Andy, who helps us produce our intros and our break sounds. If you want to hear more of Andy's work and like Formula One racing, check out the Outlap F1 podcast. It's your one-stop shop for Formula One news, insights, race previews, and reviews. You can find them wherever you listen to podcasts, and they even have a YouTube page. So check out Andy, Cody, John, James, and Deanna, and join them on the Outlap.
USAA knows dynamic duos can save the day, like superheroes and sidekicks, or auto and home insurance. With USAA, you can bundle your auto and home and save up to 10%. Visit USAA.com/bundle.
Bundle savings are off total premium, not available in all states or in all situations. To qualify, auto policy must be active prior to property policy issue, subject to change. Restrictions apply. Membership eligibility and product restrictions apply and are subject to change. USAA means United Services Automobile Association and its affiliates, San Antonio, Texas.
I love magic.
All right, so we are back with part 2 of our discussion, and we are beginning with Act 1, Scene 6, Harry and Ginny Potter's house. And we kick this scene off with Albus having trouble sleeping and overhears a conversation happening between Harry and an elderly Amos Diggory.
That was fun to see him come back.
There's a name.
Yeah.
And Amos says he's been trying to make appointments at the ministry, but they tell him, well, you gotta wait 2 months. Only to be told after 2 months, well, you know, Harry's pretty busy, so you're gonna actually have to return in another 2 months. And he's been on that kind of repeat cycle.
Which is why he's come to his house in the middle of the night to, like, you will talk to me, Harry
Yes.
Potter. Yeah.
Harry responds to this by saying that, look, as head of the Magical Law Enforcement, I'm responsible. And then as he's getting ready to say what he's exactly responsible for, Amos cuts him off and says that only thing that Harry is responsible for was my son, Cedric. You remember him, don't you? And Harry, interspersed in all this, is like, yeah,
I very much remember Cedric.
I do remember
Thanks.
Cedric.
Yeah.
And just hearing the name hurts a little bit.
Yeah.
And he begins by saying, look, Cedric is a tragic loss. and I'm sympathetic for whatever memorials you want to have made or do. I am behind you on that. Amos is a little bit more accusatory, and he wants more than memorials. He wants to go a step further. He wants to bring Cedric back.
Yeah, I had the quote, "How many people have died for the boy who lived? I'm asking you to save one of them." Sir, I get it. I get you still feel the pain of your son's death. I get you still feel like he was robbed from you with the whole kill the spare bit. But at the same time, it was over 2 decades ago. If you think through the logic of this, bringing back somebody from the dead, as we saw with the Resurrection Stone, maybe not the best of ideas. And I know it wouldn't necessarily be literally right after he died. It would be saving him before he died. But as McGonagall said, if you start to mess with time, time messes with you.
Well,
and we don't know what would be the repercussions if we did go back in time to save Cedric.
What if it was Cedric's purpose in life?
To die at this point.
To save Harry.
Yeah.
Like, his purpose in life was to be there at that moment.
Yeah.
So he can step between Harry and Voldemort.
Yeah.
Which is sad because he was, as I've said on this podcast many times, very young, very talented, and with a lot of potential ahead of him.
Yeah, he was a great Hufflepuff.
Right. And yes, he was a shining example of what a Hufflepuff could be or is.
Mm-hmm.
And that was taken away from that wizarding world, and it was taken away from us as readers.
Mm-hmm.
But, the harsh reality is maybe that was his purpose, was to save a life.
Yeah.
And save an important one that would save many other lives. So, yeah, this is hard. Also, we do get the description of Amos being elderly for a reason. I want to be respectful to Amos because he was also a prominent wizard in his day, and he was a ministry official himself. But he might be slipping a little bit. This idea of bringing Cedric back from the dead is a little far-fetched.
The idea of time travel is always messed up.
Well, so Harry comes to this conversation with the same concerns that we have. Mm-hmm. Look, this is impossible. It's a bad idea. Why would you even consider this? Well, Amos comes back to him with, I've heard a rumor.
Yeah.
I've heard a rumor that the Ministry is now in possession of a time turner. A legitimate time turner. One that might actually be able to accomplish what I'm asking. And Harry, I feel, plays it outwardly very coolly by, like, all the time turners are gone.
Yeah.
Those have been destroyed. Inside, he's like, how did this old man so swiftly hear this rumor? That's concerning.
Rita Skeeter is still out there buzzing around.
Maybe, but it's concerning.
The other reason why I don't like the scene, though, if we remember back to when Harry tried to give the Diggories his winnings from the Triwizard Tournament, and both of them refused it, and they were like, we don't blame you for what happened. It sounded like he died happy then. It sounded like he thought he had just won the Triwizard Tournament with you. Like, it was... No, we don't place blame on you, Harry. And I get at the time it was more his mother saying that than it was Amos, but... Over 20 years have passed by this point. For him to still be holding this grudge against Harry Potter for his son's death when it wasn't Harry that even suggested they both take it at the same time. It was Cedric who suggested they both take it at the same time. Like, what would he have rather had happen? Like, Cedric touch it first, and then yet he's dead and nobody's able to tell that Voldemort's back?
There's a lot going on here, though. I mean... Again, Amos is an old man who's probably been tortured by the loss of his son his entire life. Mm-hmm. Now, he's at the end of his life, and it's possibly all he's dwelling on. And I think this book so far, this production so far, has clearly been centering around a father-son relationship, and now we're getting
a father-son
another father-son relationship where the father thought the world of his son. His son was perfection on earth. Like, nothing could have been better to Amos than to see his son live on and do the great things that most people expected Cedric to go on to do. So there's a lot going on here, both like the stage production symmetry, and then there's, you know, the real world practical aspects of like, this is a father at the end of his life.
And I get like
he's
they're
thinking of his
trying to
son.
set up the certain plot points that they want to accomplish.
What I think is interesting is the position Harry's put in here, because it's easy to criticize when you're just some person and you have a grievance like Amos Diggory, and you're like, hey, I don't like how you're doing this. I don't like how you're treating me. I don't like how you're shoving me to the side and disregarding me like I'm nobody. And that's not what Harry's trying to do. It is what he is doing, though. And it's like, that's part of the job. So it's interesting now that Harry had similar critiques of Amos, being like, hey, you could do better for us. You could do better for me. You could do better for the Wizarding World. Now you have people coming at them being like, hey, you could do better for us. You could do better for me. You could do better for the Wizarding World.
Well, I guess that also kind of reinforces why wizards continue to stay hidden from the Muggle world, because Muggles would be the ones coming towards the wizards and being like,
Fix this.
Hey, fix my problems. Here I could see why the Ministry for so long kept time turners more on the hush-hush, because messing with time is a very dangerous thing.
I don't think some of these things were like kept super secret. I think they were just very strictly regulated.
Yeah.
So, like, there was a lot of approval that had to be done. There was a lot of paperwork
Right.
that McGonagall and probably Albus had to sign off of so that Hermione could get the time turner.
Right.
Like, they had to go through some stuff.
Right. Which is also why it's like, okay, Amos, yeah, you wouldn't be using this responsibly.
Right. I'm not saying Harry's wrong here. Don't get me wrong. I think he actually does a really great job here. I'm just finding it interesting that he's on the other side of this now, where he's now the Ministry person, and he's getting regular people telling him, like, do your job better. Like, help me. You're supposed to help me. That's your purpose. And he's like, it is, but. And it's just interesting to see how he's now roles reversed a touch. Anyway, we get an introduction of a new character, because as Albus is trying to listen in on this very interesting conversation that's happening downstairs, he's now winded his way onto the staircase and is kind of peeking through the stairs at the adults. And this 20-something-year-old woman named Delphi pops in and startles Albus by saying, hello. She says that she also used to be a big stair listener, too, when she was younger, trying to hear all the important things going on when she was cut out of the conversation. After Albus is like, that's cool. Who are you? Exactly. And Delphi tells Albus that she's a thief. I'm about to steal everything you own. Or I'm Delphi Diggory, and that over there, that's my uncle. So her full name is Delphine Diggory, and she nods over to her uncle, Amos, who she looks after. And her and Albus then begin to share a little back and forth, share a moment of reminiscing on their namesakes, and how it's sometimes those namesakes can bring them a little extra trouble or a little extra grief. And
yeah, she said, like, oh, having Harry Potter as your dad, that must be, like, a bit wow, right? And he's like, yeah, no, not really. And her having Amos as an uncle, apparently, I mean, she said she's taking care of him at St. Oswald's home for old witches and wizards, and it's hard because he's still clearly living so much in the past.
I think that the interesting thing there is it's tough to live with people stuck in the past. Obviously, we know how Amos is stuck in the past. He's obviously here wanting a second life for his son that died a long time ago. But she's obviously looking at Albus and was like, yeah, it's tough living with someone stuck in the past. Referring to Harry being stuck in the past here.
Which I would disagree with her about. I don't think Delphi's right to think that Harry is living in the past. I think Harry has tried his best to get away from the past. It's just that his past is constantly knocking on his door because people remember him for every famous thing that he has ever done in his entire lifetime. So it's hard to avoid your reputation when your reputation is the reputation of Harry Potter. That's hard.
I also think Harry has done a pretty good job of trying to move on from that, but people just won't. And maybe that's what she means, too, is maybe people just won't let him move on from it. And he's not willingly stuck in the past. He's just being dragged back into it routinely.
He's focusing on work. It's not like he's sitting around in a bar being like, everybody buy me a drink. I defeated Voldemort,
Unless just him being in that profession is what she's referring to. In the idea of, well, you're still fighting dark wizards like you always wanted to, like you always have done. So maybe that's just like I
don't know.
A rut Harry is stuck into instead of being a good father like everybody wants him to be. Yeah, she does mention that they are residing in Upper Flagley at St. Oswald's Home for Old Witches and Wizards. And Amos begins to call for her. And she eventually meets Amos, who's still yelling at Harry, and says, "Come, meet the once great Harry Potter. Now a stone-cold ministry man."
Which, again, I think is rich coming from a man who worked for the ministry. It's an insult. He's meaning it as an insult.
I don't know that I'd go so far as to say insult. I think it's certainly a shot at Harry. And it's certainly meant to evoke something in Harry.
Yeah, he wants him to feel guilty enough that he does give him the time turner.
But it also points to what I had just kind of gone on about of... Harry, now you're in it. And yeah, this is the critiques you're going to get from people that aren't always happy with every decision you make, because now it affects everyone all the time. And you're not just governing for yourself, you're governing for an entire country, and apparently the people of Greece and Hungary as well. So yeah, your decisions matter, and it affects people. It's an interesting comment. The once great Harry Potter, now a stone-cold ministry man.
And an interesting for Albus to eavesdrop on and witness firsthand.
Yeah. We now transition scenes. We now get scene 7, and we're still in Harry and Ginny's house. However, now we've transitioned to Albus's room. And we get a little sneak peek into life at the Potter house.
Which sounds so much fun. It's like total fun chaos.
James has pink hair all of a sudden and is not happy about it. He threatens to use his cloak, and Ginny says, "That's not why your father gave you that cloak." Obviously referencing Harry's invisibility cloak. I guess now James's invisibility cloak.
Yeah.
Well, James's invisibility cloak that went to Harry for his
which went right back to a James.
That's now back to James. So there's that. Lily has lost her potions book and is searching for it. And Ginny critiques her daughter's fashion sense by saying that she can't keep on the fairy wings that are currently fluttering when she goes to school.
But they're pretty.
They're fluttery. Harry ends up appearing in Albus's doorway, and he's got gifts. So Harry gives Albus a love potion that was gifted from Ron.
Yeah, Ron sent like all these back-to-school gifts, which I think is fun. I mean,
well, he works at a shop. So.
Yeah, but I think that's a fun thing for him to do as an uncle. It's like, you're going back to school. Here are fun things.
Sure.
Granted, the fun things are odd things, but it's a Weasley sense of humor. So there you go.
Well, and that's what Harry thinks. He's like, I know this love potion is a joke. I'm not exactly sure what the joke is, but I'm sure it's a joke.
Yeah.
And Harry goes on and says that Lily got farting gnomes from Ron, and James got a comb that turns his hair pink. So now we get the reasoning for James being so upset.
I love, though, that the first thing James did was comb his hair and then discover that it's gone pink. I don't know if that's Ron being like, okay, I know you're a little full of yourself and you want to put your hair a certain way, make it look nice, but it's just funny that he immediately used his gift only to discover it's not the gift he thought it would be.
Harry then transitions and says he has his own gift for Albus. Ginny, who is at the doorway listening to this early conversation, seems content and then leaves to give Harry, kind of a moment with Albus. And Harry says that he gave James the invisibility cloak. He gave Lily the fairy wings. Albus, now that you're 14, I want to give you something special. I want to give you something meaningful to me. And he gives Albus the blanket that he was wrapped in when he was delivered to the Dursleys all those years ago. It's the only thing that he still had from his mother, which he obtained when Albus's great-aunt Petunia passed away. Dudley ended up finding it amongst her possessions and kindly sent it to Harry. Since then, when he's wanted luck, Harry would hold on to it.
I like the idea of Dudley being in contact with Harry. Even if I know they said, like, it's mostly just for holidays and stuff, but I really enjoyed back in book 5 his transition from being the biggest bully in the world to starting to reveal a, if not a softer side, at least more sentiment towards his cousin, and seeing that more in book 6 and definitely more in book 7. So I like that they still have some semblance of a relationship.
Yeah. It's just interesting to have Harry so casually mention Petunia and then mention Dudley and then allude to them still having an actual, on some level, relationship.
Yeah, like you know who Uncle Dudley is. Yeah. That name means something to you.
Harry then suggests, hey, if you don't mind, we can maybe meet up on Hallows Eve, the night that my parents died, and we can, have the blanket there, and we can talk, and we could just have us time. Me and you time. Wouldn't that be good? Just me and you time.
Yeah.
And Albus is not receptive to this.
I hate everything about this conversation.
Well, let's talk about the conversation.
Can we talk about before even they start to have this deeper conversation? When Harry said that this blanket brought him comfort and luck, Albus touches the blanket and he's like, oh, let's hope it brings me luck. And this is one of those things, again, where I think you could interpret it one of two ways. I took it as being very sarcastic when he's touching the blanket. And be like, huh, yeah, luck, look at that. I think you could read it also as him being genuine with touching the blanket, because right after he touches it, he's like, no, I think you should keep it. It's your blanket. So you could almost take that as Albus being kind and not wanting to take it because he literally does not want it, but being like, no, it has more meaning for you.
So my interpretation of that was, I think Albus is being a little sarcastic and a little snippy, but not with an edge to it. I think it's just like a casual, whatever comment.
Yeah, like a teenager comment.
Yeah, I'm not really interested in this, but sure, I'll humor you for 2 seconds and then move on.
Yeah.
The problem is Harry doesn't move on. he doubles and triples down on this.
Well, because he doesn't really seem to care about the importance or the meaning of the gift, which I understand because it's not his life. It wasn't the thing he was wrapped up in before he was abandoned at his aunt and uncle's house.
Okay, so the gift itself, before we get into the whole conversation and see how this escalates, I get the meaning of the gift, and I can very much see Harry and Ginny talking about this, in bed the night before, hey, Ginny, what do you think about this? And Ginny's like, I think that'd be a very sweet idea, and blah, 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 and whatever. I can see them discussing it the night before, and while I understand it, and while I get it, I don't think it's an appropriate gift for Albus.
For a 14-year-old in general.
Sure. I just don't think it's going to connect with him. And while it's meaningful for you, and that's great, and I get you're also, it's not just the gift. I think we should acknowledge that. It's not just the blanket here. It's Harry trying to be open and vulnerable with his son. It's Harry sharing some personal information about him, trying to connect and just be real for a second. And I think it's double. It's like, yes, I'm giving you a gift that's meaningful to me and our family's history, but also hey, I'm trying to open up here.
Yeah. I'm
trying to let you in. Can we just have a moment?
And it's not like he has a second invisibility cloak to give away.
No, and that goes to the firstborn, the oldest.
Yeah.
So there's things there. But there's multiple layers to why Harry's doing it, which I understand. I just think he'd be, and Ginny for that matter, because again, I think they've discussed it. I think they're both a little naive in believing that Albus would be like, yeah, this is awesome. I think that's a little misstep on their part.
I don't really think that Harry was aiming for it to be, yeah, this is awesome. I think it was...
Positive. He was looking for a little bit more positivity.
Well, I think it was more like, for Harry, family is so important because he missed out on those years with his parents, and being able to have children of his own and be the father is such an important job to him. I think he sees this as, this is how I make you feel like you're still part of the family, because you have been struggling with that idea of being a Potter these past few years of going to Hogwarts and being in Slytherin, being the only one in Slytherin. So if you want to truly still feel like part of our family, I am going to give you the one item that I still have that did come from my family. And you should feel like you are part of this. I don't need you to be like, yay, thanks, Dad, I'll treasure it forever. But just getting it to be like, this is important and I want you, my son, to have it. He should have treated it with more respect than he does.
I think initially it's fine. I think Harry should have probably dropped it and just let it be.
Yeah, his mistake was then asking about packing.
His mistake was doubling down and trying to continue the moment. When I think if he just dropped it, everything would have been cool. So Harry doubles down and was like, okay, well, I could at least help you with packing. I loved packing. It meant that I was leaving the Dursleys and going to Hogwarts. And I know you don't like Hogwarts, but, I could still help you pack and get ready.
I don't fault Harry for doubling down, because from his perspective, I could see you had what seems to be a positive moment, maybe the first positive moment with Albus that you've had in months, maybe years. So you're going to want to take advantage of that. But I think Albus is the one who escalates this to such extreme and unnecessary degrees.
Okay, so the actual discussion between Albus and Harry reads as such. Harry, do you want a hand packing? I always loved packing. It meant I was leaving Privet Drive and going back to Hogwarts, which was, well, I know you don't love it there. Albus says, for you, it's the greatest place on earth. I know. The poor orphan, bullied by his uncle and aunt, Dursley. Harry, Albus, please, can we just... Albus, traumatized by his cousin, Dudley, saved by Hogwarts. I know it all, Dad. Blah, blah, blah. Harry, I'm not going to rise to your bait, Albus Potter. Albus responds, the poor orphan who went on to save us all. So may I say, on behalf of wizarding kind, how grateful we are for your heroism. Should we bow now, or will a curtsy do? Harry says, Albus, please. You know I've never wanted gratitude. Albus says, I'm overflowing with it. It must be the kind gift of this moldy blanket that did it. Harry, moldy blanket? Albus, what did you think would happen? We'd hug? I'd tell you I always loved you? What? What? Harry, finally losing his temper. You know what? I'm done with being made responsible for your unhappiness. At least you've got a dad. Because I didn't. Okay? Albus, and you think that was unlucky? I don't. Harry, you wish me dead? Albus, no. I just wish you weren't my dad. Harry, seeing red. Well, there are times I wish you weren't my son. Then there's a long silence. Albus nods. A pause. Harry realizes what he said. No, I didn't mean that. Albus says, yes, you did. Harry says, Albus, you just know how to get under my skin. Albus says, you meant it, Dad, and honestly, I don't blame you. There's a horrible pause. Albus says, you should probably leave me alone now. Harry says, Albus, please. Albus picks up the blanket and throws it. It collides with Ron's love potion, which spills all over the blanket and the bed, producing a small puff of smoke. Albus says, "No luck or love for me, then," and leaves.
I don't love it. I feel like it escalates in a manufactured way. I feel like where that happens, like the whole Albus being like, okay, look at me touching your blanket, hope it brings me luck. But that's sarcasm. That seems realistic. That seems fine. Poking at Harry about Hogwarts being his safe place after being abused by the Dursleys, traumatized by Dudley, is really pushing boundaries that I don't like. I could see a kid doing that to their parent, sure, but I don't like it because we know Harry was abused. And for him to poke fun at his father's trauma is not okay.
It's different. He's coming from a different place. He didn't know Harry as a kid, obviously. He didn't know what Harry struggled with and went through. What he knows is what he's struggling and what he's going through. And while Harry is trying to point out, you're living a better life than what I had to live, that's not a good message to sink it. Well, it might be true. It's factually true. That's not what Albus wants to hear either. So now you're getting this back and forth that's escalating upward.
Well, I still disagree. I still think, like, knowing abuse happened, knowing being traumatized happened. If he's able to throw that out so half-heartedly, you're just like, yeah, I know.
But he doesn't know what that means. He doesn't tangibly know what that abuse was like because he hasn't lived that abuse.
He hasn't lived it, and he might not know the extent of it, but knowing that it happened does not mean that it's okay for him to poke at it.
I don't think Albus knows what he's saying. So it's easy for him in a sarcastic throwaway way to be like, yes, we all know your story. You were abused as a kid. You were blah, 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 blah,
right.
blah. He literally says blah, blah, blah.
Right. So, like, yes, I could see this as being realistic. I'm saying I don't like it. What I really don't like then is the escalation with the moldy blanket and poking at him, saying how, like, you know, how grateful we should be for your heroism. Should we bow now? Should we curtsy? Like, everything that Albus is throwing at Harry is to goad him into saying what he ends up saying of, sometimes I wish you weren't my son.
Which is an inappropriate thing for Harry to say.
Yes.
That's not right.
That's not right. But Albus was literally just saying, I, like, wish I wasn't your son. I wish kind of like you were dead. Like, all of my happiness I'm placing onto your shoulders. And I think it's mostly Albus trying to make somebody else feel pain because he thinks he alone is the one who is hurting emotionally here. And I don't like him trying to solve his own emotional pain by making somebody else hurt.
You're expecting emotional maturity from a 14... This is exactly what a lot of people accused Harry of when he was 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, even 16. Emotional immaturity that led him to doing some really dumb things, saying some dumb things. He almost had his friendship end with Ron and Hermione in a big blow-up because he was emotionally immature and he felt that he was alone and isolated and on his own, even though he very much wasn't. Albus is very much not. But that's not how he perceived it. So if Harry was emotionally unstable during that time, why are we also faulting Albus for being emotionally unstable at 14?
Here, I think Albus is perceiving Harry as wronging him simply by existing. His existence of being this famous person who was in Gryffindor has made his life so difficult because he got sorted into Slytherin and everyone judges him because he's a Potter in Slytherin and therefore his life is really tragic and horrible. And I think it's so much of him placing this unhappiness upon Harry when all Harry has done is try to support him and approve of his friendships and tell him it's okay that you're in Slytherin. You should enjoy being in Slytherin. Like, the hat put you there for a reason. If Albus actually accepted his Slytherin side and stopped lamenting the fact that he's this oddball out in Slytherin instead of in Gryffindor, then I think his time at Hogwarts would be so much more enjoyable.
I think you're looking at Harry one way, and what you like about Harry, you're not giving Albus that same leeway. You're not giving Albus that same room to grow and develop as a person. What you liked about Harry being a little emo or a little bit sassy or a little bit more emotional in the 5th book, which is your favorite book.
It is.
You're not giving that to Albus. You're saying he's bad for it. I think Harry was good up until he said, I'm done being made responsible for your happiness. That, I think, is a fine parent line to say. You setting an edge, setting a boundary, being like, hey, look, I'm done being made responsible for this. Mm-hmm. You're unhappy. I'm recognizing you're unhappy. I'm trying to help you. Mm-hmm. But stop putting all of the blame on me.
Right.
Fine. That's when you need to leave the room at that point.
Right.
Set the boundary and leave. Where he makes his mistake is he says, at least you have a father. Now you're turning it into something else. That's when it goes off the rails bad. Because that's when you get into the, I wish you were my dad, I wish you weren't my son. That's the craziness. If you just left it at, I'm done being responsible for your unhappiness, that's fine.
Okay, going back to book 5, I was okay with Harry being emo during that time because he was isolated from his friends, from information from the Order. He had literally just gone through a life and death situation. He just saw Cedric be murdered. So he was legitimately isolated. I don't think Albus is as isolated here. I know he feels that way, I know you would disagree.
Does that not make it real? As Dumbledore so adeptly said in King's Cross, which is also your favorite chapter.
Yes, it is.
Oh. Just because it's happening in your head doesn't mean that it's not real.
Right.
So he's perceiving, I am isolated, I'm alone. Doesn't that make it real on some degree?
He might be convincing himself that he's alone, but he has his father desperately trying to be like, I am on your side. I am not mad at you that you're in Slytherin. I'm not mad that you made a friend with Scorpius Malfoy. I'm not judging you for what has happened so far. I get that Hogwarts isn't the same experience that it was for me as it is for you. And Albus is just pushing away any love that could possibly come towards him.
Is it possible for you to see this through Albus's eyes and through his perspective and see where he's coming from on some of this?
No, I totally get that he feels like he's alone in the world and he's isolated from everything. I just think if he were to take a second and get out of his own head and look around him, he is putting the isolation on himself. Whereas like Harry in book 5, he wasn't putting it on himself. He legitimately was being separated from everybody while he was stuck at the Dursleys, not getting any information. I mean, he at least, yes, did have letters from his friends being like, we can't tell you things, sorry, but hang in there. Like, I get that was, you know, he has a connection to the Wizarding world here. It just feels like Harry's isolation was more tangible, whereas Albus's is more self-made.
What if you got a more thorough look into Albus's life day to day like we got from Harry?
That might change it, because we don't necessarily see the daily bullying that he gets.
Right. So I guess my official stance on this is I don't see either individual as in the wrong. Yes, they say some inappropriate things that should not have been said. I think that is something we can both very clearly agree on.
Yeah.
But I don't think either of them is wholly wrong for the positions that they're each taking. I think it's just a unfortunate miscommunication, and they might need just some help getting through it. And this ultimately goes back to what we've said repeatedly on this podcast from pretty much book one, day one of
therapy.
Therapy is needed. Albus needs help. I think that's clear. I think he needs some help, and it can't be Harry, because sometimes it's too close. It's too close, and you just need an in-between person who doesn't have a bias here. Because as great as Harry's trying to be, he is biased.
Right.
And which is okay, but the help that I think Albus needs is someone on the outside to just be an intermediary.
I would love to see him go talk to Ginny, to be honest. I think that she would be a really good source to help him work through his emotions.
I wonder if Ginny presents, granted on a somewhat smaller scale, some of the same problems, because Ginny is also famous. Yes, she's not as famous as Harry, because I don't think anybody is even remotely close to that at this point in the wizarding world.
Well, it's not alive.
Yes, but she's still famous, and she is herself quite talented magically. So I can see Albus looking at both of his parents and being like, I can't achieve this. Like, you're both smart, you're both talented, you're both successful. Like, you have all of these great things, and what am I? I'm not any of that. Even James. Even let's look at James. He's popular. He seems to be getting along with everybody. Everybody likes James. I can't even get out of his shadow. Forget the parents. I can't even get out of his shadow. I'm not like him either.
Yeah, but I still think Ginny would be better, because it seems like it's the Potter last name that is following him more so than the Weasley last name, or from abilities other than like Harry's flying ability, which Ginny would also have. I think Ginny would do a good job of showing the mother's love that has been such a big theme throughout the entire series, because she would listen to him and, you know, give him his comfort and be like, look, I recognize that Hogwarts is not the easiest for you, and sure, it is hard to be related to Harry in any way, shape, or form, because he just has such a big reputation that whether he invites it on himself or not is always going to be there. So as the wife of Harry Potter, I can identify with you, the son of Harry Potter, what that means and how you navigate it.
I could see this situation happening in real families. Like, forget the wizarding world for a second. I could see it happening in the real world.
I still think it escalates unrealistically, but I could see the general idea of the conversation being realistic. I think I also take personal offense to it, because I too had a baby blanket that I'm sure if I had a child, they'd be like, that thing's disgusting. But I'm like, it's my comfort blanket. Like, how dare you insult it?
If anything, I am suspicious of why Harry decided to give James the invisibility cloak so early on. I understand.
I'm sure he was thinking like, oh, I was able to handle it as a first year. It's like, yeah, but your son is not you.
Yeah, but the purpose of the invisibility cloak is to pass it on when you are ready to meet death and go with him as a friend.
Yeah.
So giving the blanket when you haven't met death yet.
Yeah.
That's early? Like, obviously he got the blanket because James had passed away.
I mean...
James, his father.
James's father. I guess it would be him thinking that that was the right way to do it, because that's how he received the blanket. And despite everything that we've said about Harry, Dumbledore agreed that he is fairly emotionally mature for his age, even at 11 years old. James is not that. James using it to cover himself from his pink hair. I could see him letting the Weasley side come out and playing pranks on people from underneath the invisibility cloak.
Do you think Harry wrote a note to McGonagall being like, hey, just a heads up, I gave him the cloak? watch him, please.
Keep an eye out.
Here's also the map. Here's
yeah,
the
like
map.
gifted the map to McGonagall. Will be like, please keep my son out of trouble.
Yeah. I could very much see that.
Speaking of the map, then, I'm surprised he didn't gift the map to Albus. Because I feel like that would be a gift that would be maybe not equal on magical level to the cloak in terms of to enjoy Hogwarts more. I think it might be nice for Albus to be able to see all the special things about Hogwarts and go explore it so that maybe he feels more of a connection to it.
I think going back to what we just said, I think he keeps it to keep an eye on James. So he could send a quick owl and be like, hey, can you get him out of that area? He's not supposed to be there.
Meanwhile, Lily is being the perfect little daughter, just playing with her little fluttering wings and being like, I have a personality. Like, I could see it as being Aunt Luna sent those wings instead of Harry buying them for her.
I like how nonchalant Harry is. She's like, yeah, I got her wings. She likes them. That was easy. Like, I know what to get Lily.
My daughters are easier than my sons, I guess.
Yeah, this was an eventful couple of scenes. And obviously we have our different takes on Albus and Harry's relationship. So that might be reflected in the poll for this episode. So let us know what you guys think by commenting on the episode and participating in that poll, which you can both do on Spotify. Or you can let us know by commenting on Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, YouTube by searching @HogwartsAPod and finding us there. And we will love to discuss your thoughts on it. And I think we're very eager to get your thoughts as we delve deeper into Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, especially since early on, a lot of you haven't really had a whole lot of experience with Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. So
yeah, if you go see it or if you do decide to pick up the book to read it, please give us your thoughts as you go.
Yeah. So with that, we will wrap it up here, and we will be back again for another episode here soon. Keep an eye out on our socials to get that information. Thanks for listening. We'll be back. Thank you for listening to Hogwarts, a podcast. If you like what you've heard, please click the subscribe button on your preferred podcasting app and follow us on Twitter and Instagram @HogwartsAPod.